Jake Morrison walked through the massive halls of Nexus Prime, his boots making soft sounds on the alien metal floors. The space station was bigger than any city he had ever seen on Earth. Strange creatures filled the corridors around him. Some looked like walking trees with blue leaves. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that glowed with inner light. A few floated through the air like clouds, but Jake could see eyes watching him from within their misty forms. He tried not to stare, but it was hard. After 3 years of first contact with alien races, humans were still amazed by how different life could be. The beings around him had traveled from hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. They were all here for one reason. Today, the Galactic Council would vote on what to do with Earth and its people. Commander Lisa Parker met Jake at the entrance to the Great Assembly Hall. She looked tired and worried. For weeks she had been trying to convince the alien representatives that humans deserved to remain free. The charges against Earth were serious. The aliens said humans were too violent, too unpredictable, and too dangerous to be allowed to develop on their own. Any word from the others? Jake asked quietly as they walked toward the human section. Lisa shook her head. Dr. Kelly is still preparing his presentation about human cooperation. The footage from our peace missions might help. But Jake, I have to be honest with you, it does not look good. The assembly hall was enormous. It stretched up so high that Jake could barely see the ceiling. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved rows of seats. At the center stood a platform where speakers could address the council. High above them, the council leaders sat in a circle of floating chairs. Chancellor Vexthara of the Zephyrian Collective was the most vocal opponent of human freedom. The bird-like alien stood nearly 8 feet tall with golden feathers and sharp, intelligent eyes. His species considered themselves the moral leaders of the galaxy. They had convinced many other races that humans were a threat that needed to be controlled. The evidence is clear, Chancellor Vexthara announced as his voice echoed through the hall. Humans have spent their entire history fighting wars against their own kind. They have poisoned their world with industrial waste. They build weapons, capable of destroying their entire planet. Now they want to bring this violence and chaos to the stars. Dr. Ryan Kelly stood to respond. The small human looked tiny on the massive platform, but his voice was strong. Honored beings of the Council, yes, humanity has made mistakes. We have fought wars and damaged our environment, but we have also learned from these mistakes. We have built peace between our nations. We are working to heal our world. We ask only for the chance to prove that we can be good neighbors in this galaxy. Jake watched as various alien species asked questions. Some seemed curious about human culture. Others appeared already convinced that Earth should be enslaved. The crystalline hegemony representative spoke in musical tones that were translated by machines. Humans show promise, but their development is incomplete. Under proper guidance, they could become useful servants to more advanced civilizations. The Aquatic Federation delegate agreed. We have observed human behavior for 50 Earth years through your television signals. You show great capacity for labor and following orders when properly motivated. Slavery would benefit both humans and the galaxy. Lisa Parker tried one last appeal. We understand your concerns about human unpredictability, but this same unpredictability has led to our greatest achievements. Our art, our science, our exploration of space. These things came from our ability to think in new ways. The galaxy would benefit from human creativity, not human slavery, but the Council had already made up their minds. Chancellor Vexthara called for the vote. One by one, the alien species announced their decision. The Zephyrian Collective voted for enslavement. The crystalline hegemony agreed. The Aquatic Federation added their voice to the growing chorus. Jake felt his heart sink as more and more species voted against human freedom. Even races that humans had helped during first contact turned away from them now. The fear of human unpredictability was stronger than any gratitude they might have felt. Far across space, Captain Alex Turner received the transmission on his ship. He commanded one of Earth's small defense fleets. The message was simple and Terrible. The vote was 846 species in favor of enslaving humanity. Only one race, the mysterious Voidwalkers, had chosen not to vote at all. Alex stared at the screen in his command center. Around him, his crew waited for orders. They all knew what this meant. Within days, massive alien fleets would arrive at Earth. Humans would be taken from their homes and divided among the galaxy's major powers. Children would be separated from parents. Families would be broken apart and scattered across hundreds of worlds. "Sir, what are our orders?" asked his first officer. Alex took a deep breath. Earth's military forces were no match for the combined alien fleets, but he would not surrender without a fight. "Send word to all defense ships. We make our stand here. And get me a secure channel to the resistance cells on Earth. Tell Kate Williams that the vote went against us. It is time to go underground." On the planet below, Kate Williams was already preparing. The former Marine had spent months setting up hidden bases and supply caches. She knew this day would come. The aliens had made their choice. Now humans would have to make theirs. The first alien harvest ships appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days later. They were massive vessels, each one capable of carrying millions of humans. As they moved toward Earth, Captain Turner's small fleet moved to intercept them. The battle was brief and hopeless. Human weapons barely scratched the alien hull plating. Within hours, the Earth's orbital defenses were destroyed, but as the aliens landed on Earth's surface, they found that many humans had simply vanished. Kate Williams and her resistance network had moved thousands of people into hidden shelters. The aliens would get their slaves, but they would have to work for every single one. Jake Morrison found himself on one of the transport ships, crowded together with hundreds of other humans. Through the small windows, he watched Earth grow smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Around him, people cried or sat in stunned silence. Their world was gone. Their freedom was gone, but Jake could see something else in their eyes. The same unpredictability that the aliens feared so much. The same stubborn human refusal to give up that had carried them from caves to the stars. The aliens thought they had won. They thought humans would accept slavery and serve quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 23 years had passed since the Great Vote. Ben Carter swung his mining pick against the crystal wall, each strike sending bright sparks into the dim air of the underground cavern. The son of Earth's former president was now just another slave working in the mines of Kepler 442b. His designation number, Human 7849, was burned into his arm like cattle markings from the old days. The Zephyrian guards watched from elevated platforms, their golden feathers now dulled by the mine dust. They carried energy weapons that could kill a human instantly, but mostly they just watched and counted production numbers. The bird-like aliens had learned that humans worked better when left mostly alone as long as quotas were met. "Keep your head down," whispered the human working next to Ben. "Guard Captain Crickstall is in a bad mood today." 3 workers were sent to punishment detail for talking too much. Ben nodded and continued working. But inside his mind, he was thinking about other things. Messages had been reaching the mining colonies through secret channels. Humans on different worlds were still in contact with each other, despite alien efforts to keep them apart. Something big was being planned. Meanwhile, on the luxury space stations of the Aquatic Federation, Dr. Maria Santos crawled through maintenance tunnels carrying her repair tools. Once she had been one of Earth's leading scientists, working on theories that might have unlocked faster-than-light travel. Now she fixed broken air recyclers and waste disposal systems for her fish-like owners. But Maria had not stopped thinking like a scientist. Every system she repaired taught her more about alien technology. Every conversation she overheard gave her new information about the galaxy. She had learned to speak several alien languages fluently, something her owners thought was impossible for a simple human slave. The coded messages she sent to other human communities were hidden in maintenance reports. To the aliens, they looked like boring technical documents. To humans who knew how to read them, they contained vital intelligence about alien weaknesses and technology that could be used against their captors, on the industrial planet Gamma 7, Chris Hamilton supervised a factory floor where humans assembled complex electronics for the crystalline hegemony. The crystal beings valued precision above all else, which made Chris's job both easier and harder. The aliens expected perfect work, but they also followed predictable routines that humans could exploit. Chris had spent years building a network of trusted workers. They communicated through hand signals developed from old Earth military codes. Small acts of sabotage were disguised as accidents or equipment failures. A wrong wire here, a loose connection there, nothing that would be traced back to deliberate action, but enough to slow production and waste alien resources. The new quota numbers came down from management, Chris told his work team during their brief meal break. They want 20% more production starting next week. The humans around the table looked angry but not surprised. The aliens were always pushing for more work. But Chris's words had a hidden meaning. 20% was code for a message from the resistance. Something important was about to happen. The most dangerous job of all belonged to Elena Rodriguez. She worked as a house servant in the mansion of Chancellor Vexthara himself on the Zephyrian homeworld. Every day she cleaned the rooms where the alien leader made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. She served meals to important visitors and listened to conversations that were supposed to be secret. Elena had learned the Zephyrian language perfectly, but she pretended to understand only simple commands. The aliens talked freely in front of her, treating her like a piece of furniture that happened to be alive. They had no idea that she understood every word they said. It was during one of these conversations that Elena learned the truth that would change everything. Chancellor Vexthara was meeting with military commanders from across the galaxy. Their voices were tense with worry as they discussed something called the Devourer threat. The latest reports from the Outer Rim are worse than we feared, one general was saying. 3 entire star systems have gone completely dark. No distress signals, no survivors, nothing left but empty space. Chancellor Vexthara's feathers rustled with agitation. What do our scientists say about the nature of this threat? Unknown, sir. The entities seem to consume matter itself, leaving no trace behind. Our best fleets have been destroyed without inflicting any meaningful damage. Traditional weapons and tactics are completely ineffective. Elena continued polishing the crystal decanter she was holding, but her mind was racing. An enemy that could destroy entire star systems was heading toward the galaxy's inner regions. The aliens were terrified, and their fear was justified. What about alternative strategies? Asked another commander. Unconventional approaches that might succeed where standard military doctrine has failed. There was a long silence before Chancellor Vexthara spoke. Our war colleges have run millions of simulations. The enemy adapts too quickly to organized resistance. They counter every logical tactical approach we develop. What we need is something unpredictable, chaotic, impossible to plan for. You mean human tactics, the general said quietly. I mean exactly that. But we cannot simply free the humans and ask for their help. They would never forgive us for 23 years of slavery. And even if they agreed to fight, how could we trust them not to turn their weapons on us afterward? Elena finished her work and left the room, but she had heard enough. That night she used the hidden communication device she had built from stolen electronic parts. The message she sent to human communities across the galaxy was simple but shocking. The aliens faced an enemy they could not defeat. For the first time since the Great Vote, humans might have bargaining power. The news spread through the human underground networks like fire. In the mining colonies, workers passed whispers from shift to shift. On the factory worlds, production supervisors shared coded messages during work assignments. Even on the luxury stations, maintenance workers found ways to communicate the incredible information. Ben Carter was working his shift when the message reached him. The human next to him had received word from a contact in the kitchen staff. The bird people are scared, the man whispered. Something out there is eating whole star systems, and their armies cannot stop it. For the first time in 23 years, Ben felt something other than despair. If the aliens were truly facing extinction, they might be desperate enough to Make a deal, freedom in exchange for human military expertise. It was a slim hope, but it was more hope than any human had felt since the day of the great vote. Dr. Maria Santos received the news while working on a ventilation system in the station's command center. The alien officers above her were discussing the same threat that Elena had overheard. Their fear was obvious even through the translation devices. We need to contact the other communities, Maria thought as she continued her repairs. If this is real, we need to be ready to negotiate from a position of strength. Chris Hamilton got the message during the shift change at his factory. The implications were enormous. If humans could present a united front and offer something the aliens desperately needed, they might finally win their freedom. But it would require coordination. Across hundreds of worlds and careful timing, the underground networks began working overtime. Secret messages flew between human communities throughout the galaxy. Plans that had been developing for years were suddenly accelerated. Weapons that had been hidden in asteroid belts were prepared for use. Most importantly, human leaders began reaching out to see if the aliens were truly desperate enough to negotiate. The galaxy that had voted to enslave Earth was about to learn that their former victims might be their only salvation. Captain Luke Peterson guided his small scout ship through the twisted remains of what had once been the Centauri Prime system. Where 3 planets had orbited a bright yellow star, now only empty space remained. Even the star itself was gone, leaving behind a dark void that seemed to bend light around its edges. Luke was one of the few humans allowed to pilot spacecraft, working as a scout for the crystalline hegemony. His alien masters had given him this job because humans were considered expendable for dangerous missions. They never expected that Luke would become one of their most valuable intelligence sources. "Command, this is Scout 7, Luke spoke into his communication device. "I have reached the target coordinates. There is nothing here. No debris, no radiation signatures, no trace that a solar system ever existed in this location." The reply came from Admiral Nina Clark, a human woman who served as a strategic advisor to the crystal beings despite her slave status. Her voice was carefully controlled, but Luke could hear the tension beneath her words. "Confirmed, Scout 7. Can you detect any signs of the entities responsible?" Luke checked his instruments carefully. His ship's sensors were alien technology, far more advanced than anything Earth had ever built. But even these sophisticated devices could find no trace of the devourers that had consumed an entire star system. "Negative, Command. Whatever did this has moved on." "But Admiral, the space here feels wrong. My navigation computers are having trouble maintaining stable readings. It is like the laws of physics have been changed somehow." Nina Clark studied the data streaming into her command center deep within the crystalline hegemony's military complex. She had been analyzing devourer attacks for months, trying to understand an enemy that defied all logic. The creatures seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to track or predict. 3 more star systems had vanished in the past week alone. The Outer Rim territories were completely abandoned as entire alien civilizations fled toward the galactic core. Panic was spreading through the established powers as their mighty fleets proved useless against an enemy they could not even properly. SEE Dr. Tony Garcia worked frantically in his laboratory on the research station orbiting Vega Prime. The former human physicist had been assigned to study devourer remains after a lucky hit by an alien battlecruiser had damaged one of the creatures, enough to leave traces behind. The sample was unlike anything in known science. It seemed to shift between different states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes energy, sometimes something that had no name in any language. Tony had spent weeks trying to understand its basic properties. "The cellular structure is completely adaptive," he reported to his alien supervisors through the communication link. "It can reconfigure itself to counter any threat or energy signature it encounters. No wonder conventional weapons are useless." But Tony had not shared all of his discoveries with the aliens. Hidden in his personal notes were observations that might change everything. The Devourer material showed one crucial weakness. It could not adapt to truly random, chaotic patterns. When exposed to unpredictable energy fluctuations, it became unstable and began to break down. The problem was that alien military thinking was fundamentally organized and logical. Every strategy followed predictable patterns that the Devourers could easily counter. What was needed was the kind of wild, improvised tactics that humans specialized in on Earth. Now, a nearly empty world monitored by automated alien systems? Sam Mitchell led a small group of free humans who had avoided capture for over 2 decades. The former astronaut had built a hidden base in the ruins of Colorado Springs, where he and his team developed experimental weapons using salvaged alien technology. "The test results are promising," Sam told his small team as they gathered around. A work table covered with strange devices. "The quantum disruption field generator works, but only when the targeting patterns are completely random. Any organized approach allows the Devourer material to adapt and neutralize the effect." His team had captured samples of Devourer biomatter from crashed alien ships that had attempted to study the creatures. Working with equipment that was part human engineering and part stolen alien technology, they had created weapons that might actually hurt the galaxy's greatest threat. The breakthrough came when Sam realized that human brain patterns, under extreme stress, generated exactly the kind of chaotic quantum signatures that disrupted Devourer adaptive systems. It was a discovery that could only have been made by a species willing to literally think themselves to death in combat. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was falling apart. Chancellor Vex Thara stood before the emergency assembly, his golden feathers now showing patches of gray from stress. Around him, representatives from hundreds of species shouted accusations and demands in dozens of different languages. "The Aquatic Federation has lost 60% of their territory," one delegate screamed. "Where is the promised support from your fleets?" "Our own worlds are under attack," replied a crystalline hegemony speaker. "We cannot spare ships to defend others when our own survival is at stake." The unity that had held the galaxy together for thousands of years was cracking under pressure. Species that had cooperated for generations were now hoarding resources and abandoning their allies. The rigid hierarchical thinking that had seemed so stable was proving completely inadequate for dealing with an existential threat. Admiral Nina Clark watched the political chaos from her command post and saw an opportunity. The aliens were desperate, disorganized, and running out of options. More importantly, they were finally beginning to realize that their assumptions about military strategy might be completely wrong. She activated a secure communication channel that connected to human resistance networks across the galaxy. The message she sent was carefully worded but clear to anyone who understood the codes that had been developed over 23 years of slavery. The great hunt begins soon. Prey animals may become predators when survival is at stake. All packs should prepare for the gathering. Ben Carter received the message in his mining colony while eating the thin soup that passed for dinner. The hidden meaning was obvious to any human who had been part of the resistance. Nina Clark was preparing to make contact with the aliens. After decades of slavery, humans might finally have leverage to negotiate. Dr. Maria Santos got the same message while performing maintenance on a water recycling system aboard an Aquatic Federation station. She immediately began preparing her own part of the plan, gathering intelligence about alien fleet positions and resource stockpiles that would be crucial in any negotiations. Chris Hamilton read the coded words during his factory shift and began activating sleeper cells that had been waiting for years. Human workers across the industrial world started preparing for coordinated action that could either free them or get them all killed. Elena Rodriguez, still working in Chancellor Vex Thara's mansion, positioned herself to overhear the conversations that would determine the galaxy's fate. The alien leaders were meeting in emergency session, and their desperation was growing with each passing day. "We must consider options that were previously unthinkable," Chancellor Vex Thara was saying to his advisors. "The humans have tactical capabilities that our simulations suggest might be effective against the Devourer threat." "You cannot be serious," replied one of his generals. "Free the humans after 23 years of slavery?" They would never cooperate with us. More likely they would join the Devourers in destroying us. Perhaps, but what choice do we have? Our conventional forces are useless. Our strategies fail before they can be implemented. We need something that the Devourers cannot predict or counter. Elena listened as the debate continued through the night. The aliens were genuinely terrified, facing the complete extinction of their civilizations. They were beginning to realize that the same unpredictability they had feared in humans might be the only thing that could save them. The next morning, Chancellor Vexthara made a decision that would have been impossible just months earlier. He authorized secret contact with the human resistance networks. The species that had voted unanimously to enslave Earth was about to ask their former victims for help. The neutral meeting place was an abandoned mining station drifting in the void between galactic sectors. No government claimed this region of space, making it the perfect location for negotiations that could change the fate of every living being. In the Galaxy. Commander Rachel Brooks adjusted her worn uniform as she walked through the station's empty corridors. She had been elected to represent humanity in these talks by a secret vote among the resistance networks. For 23 years. She had lived as a slave on an agricultural world, but before the conquest she had been a decorated military officer. Now she carried the hopes of billions of enslaved humans. Chancellor Vexthara waited in the station's main conference room, flanked by representatives from the major alien powers. The proud bird-like alien who had once led the vote to enslave. Humanity now looked tired and desperate. Gray patches showed in his golden feathers, and his sharp eyes held a fear that Rachel had never seen in any alien before. "Commander Brooks," the Chancellor said as she entered the room, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us despite the circumstances of our past relationship." Rachel took her seat across from the aliens and studied their faces. The crystalline hegemony delegate glowed dimly with stress patterns. The Aquatic Federation representative kept changing colors in what she recognized as a fear response. These beings who had once seemed so superior and confident were now clearly terrified. "Let us be honest about what this is," Rachel said in a calm voice. "You are losing a war against an enemy you cannot understand. Your fleets are being destroyed, your worlds are being consumed, and your people are fleeing toward the galactic core. You need help, and you think humans might be able to provide it." Chancellor Vexthara's feathers rustled with what might have been embarrassment. "You are correct. Our military strategies have proven completely ineffective against the Devourer threat. Our scientists believe that human tactical approaches might succeed where our methods have failed." "And what exactly are you offering in return?" Rachel asked. "Because if you think we will fight and die for you while remaining slaves, you are badly mistaken." The negotiations that followed were tense and difficult. The aliens struggled with the idea of giving up their control over humanity. They had built their civilizations on the assumption that they were superior to other species. Admitting that they needed help from their former slaves challenged everything they believed about themselves. Rachel's demands were non-negotiable. Complete freedom for all humans throughout the galaxy, reparations for 23 years of slavery, equal representation in galactic governance, the right to reclaim Earth as humanity's sovereign homeworld. Most importantly, guarantees that humans would never again be subjected to alien rule. "These terms are excessive," protested the crystalline hegemony delegate. "You ask us to restructure our entire civilization based on the promise that humans can defeat an enemy we cannot." "Then find someone else to save you," Rachel replied calmly. "But we both know there is no one else. You have tried everything your advanced civilizations can devise, and it has failed. Now you come to the species you called too primitive and dangerous to be free." The deadlock might have continued indefinitely, but urgent news from the war front forced a decision. 12 more star systems had been consumed in a single week. The Devourer advance was accelerating, and long-range sensors detected the main enemy fleet approaching from the galactic rim. Dr. Paul Thompson was released from the mining colonies to serve as humanity's military coordinator. The former head of Earth's Space Command had spent decades planning for this moment, even when it seemed impossible that it would ever come. Working with alien scientists who had once considered him property, he began developing new tactical doctrines that combined human unpredictability with alien technology. The first test of human-alien cooperation came sooner than anyone expected. A small Devourer scouting force was detected in the Vega system, moving toward one of the crystalline hegemony's major industrial worlds. Captain Steve Rogers was chosen to lead the response mission, commanding a squadron of human pilots flying modified alien fighters. Steve had been a fighter pilot before the conquest, but for 23 years he had worked in alien factories assembling the same type of ships he now flew. The irony was not lost on him as he led his mixed squadron of former slaves toward their first battle as free humans. "Remember, people," Steve spoke to his pilots over the communication system, "these things adapt to predictable tactics. Stay random, stay aggressive, and do not give them time to figure out what we are doing." The battle that followed shocked the alien observers. Where organized alien fleets had been systematically destroyed, the human pilots succeeded through pure audacity. They used ramming attacks, kamikaze runs, and constantly shifting formations that kept the Devourers off balance. Human fighter pilot Jenny Price dove her ship directly into a Devourer entity 3 times her size, detonating her ship's power core inside the creature's body. The explosion tore the alien monster apart and sent shock waves through the enemy formation. Another pilot, Danny Walsh, flew his damaged fighter in impossible patterns that violated basic physics, using gravitational slingshots around asteroids to attack from angles the Devourers could not predict or counter. His ship was falling apart, but he kept fighting until the last enemy was destroyed. The cost was terrible. Half the human pilots died in the engagement, but they had achieved something that seemed impossible. The Devourers had been defeated in direct combat. Word of the victory spread through both human slave communities and alien command structures. Faster than official reports could travel, for the first time since the crisis began, there was genuine hope. But celebration was brief as long-range sensors detected something that made the Vega engagement look like a minor skirmish. The main Devourer fleet was approaching the galactic core, millions of entities moving in a coordinated swarm that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. General Amy Foster, freed from the labor camps where she had spent 23 years, took command of the hastily assembled Human Liberation Fleet. Her ships were a strange mixture of freed slaves flying jury-rigged alien vessels, resistance fighters and captured ships, and the few humans who had maintained hidden fleets during the occupation. "It is not much of a navy," Amy told her staff officers as they studied tactical displays in the command center of their flagship, a converted alien cargo hauler that had been transformed into a makeshift carrier. "But it has something the galaxy has not seen in generations. People who are willing to die for something they believe in." The human fleet began gathering at rally points throughout the galaxy. Former slaves abandoned their workstations and joined the growing armada. Hidden resistance cells emerged from decades of hiding, bringing weapons and ships that the aliens never knew existed on Earth. Sam Mitchell's team worked around the clock to mass-produce their experimental weapons. The quantum disruption devices that could destabilize Devourer biomatter were crude and dangerous, but they worked. More importantly, they required human neural patterns to function properly, making them useless to alien forces. Elena Rodriguez, still working in Chancellor Vextharis' mansion, provided crucial intelligence about alien fleet positions and resource allocations. Her reports helped human commanders plan their operations and avoid alien forces that might still be hostile to their former slaves. Dr. Maria Santos coordinated the technical aspects of the liberation, using her knowledge of alien systems to help human engineers adapt captured technology for their own use. Weapons, engines, and defensive systems were modified to work with human tactics and human crews. Chris Hamilton led industrial sabotage operations that disrupted alien production capabilities while secretly redirecting resources to human forces. His network of resistance fighters and factories across the galaxy provided the raw materials needed to build humanity's war machine. As human fleets converged on the galactic core, Alien populations watched in amazement. The slaves they had dismissed as inferior were now their only hope for survival. The species they had feared for being too dangerous was preparing to face the greatest danger the galaxy had ever known. The final battle would determine not just who survived, but what kind of galaxy would exist afterward for the first time. In galactic history, the outcome would be decided not by superior technology or ancient wisdom, but by the willingness of one species to sacrifice everything for the freedom of all. The final battle began at the edge of the galactic core, where ancient energy sources had powered interstellar civilization for millions of years. Admiral Kevin Martinez stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Terra's Vengeance, a massive ship built from both human innovation and alien resources in just 6 months. Through the main view screen, he watched as the Devourer fleet emerged from dark space. The enemy came in numbers that blocked out entire starfields. The queen entities, each the size of a small moon, advanced with their endless spawn toward the galaxy's beating heart. Behind them came smaller, but equally deadly creatures that moved like living shadows through the void. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez, Kevin spoke into the fleet communication system. Today we fight not just for human freedom, but for the survival of every living thing in this galaxy. The aliens who enslaved us are counting on us to save them. Let us show them what humanity is truly capable of. The human fleet was spread across thousands of cubic kilometers of space. Former slaves flew alongside resistance fighters and the few Earth ships that had survived the original conquest. Their vessels were a patchwork of different technologies, but they shared one crucial advantage. Every ship was crewed by humans, who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Colonel Diana Price led the first wave attack, commanding 10,000 human fighters in what appeared to be a suicidal charge directly at the largest queen entity. Her pilots broke every rule of space combat, using their ships as weapons, combining in impossible formations and executing maneuvers that violated basic understanding of physics. "Remember, people," Diana broadcast to her pilots as they dove toward the enemy, "we do not need to survive this. We just need to make sure they do not survive us." The alien observers watching from command ships throughout the system expected to see the human fighters destroyed within minutes. Instead, they witnessed something that challenged every assumption about space warfare. Diana's pilots died by the thousands, but each death disrupted the Devourer coordination systems in ways that organized attacks could never achieve. Fighter pilot Bobby Chun rammed his ship directly into a queen entity's sensory array, his final transmission a defiant human war cry that echoed across all communication channels. Pilot Sandra Miller flew her damaged fighter through the creature's defensive field, detonating her ship's quantum disruption device inside the monster's body. The Devourers, for the first time since entering the galaxy, began to show signs of confusion. Their collective consciousness excelled at countering logical military strategies, but the controlled chaos of human warfare created patterns they could not predict or adapt to quickly enough. Dr. Robert Kim coordinated the technical assault from a mobile research platform surrounded by the largest human battleships. His teams had discovered that Devourer biomatter became critically unstable when exposed to specific quantum frequencies generated by human neural patterns under extreme stress. "All ships with neural amplifiers, begin transmission now," Robert ordered as the battle raged around him. Every human in the fleet needs to focus on chaotic thought patterns. The more random and unpredictable, the better. Throughout the human fleet, crews began following procedures that would have seemed insane to any alien military. Instead of calm discipline, they embraced controlled panic. Instead of organized thinking, they deliberately made their thoughts as chaotic as possible. The effect on nearby Devourer entities was immediate and devastating. As the battle continued, something remarkable began to happen. Alien crews, inspired by human sacrifice and innovation, started adopting similar tactics. Zephyrian pilots abandoned their careful formations and began making ramming runs. Crystalline entities overloaded their own systems to achieve maximum destructive effect. The Aquatic Federation deployed weapons that had been considered too dangerous to use for centuries. The rigid thinking that had made these civilizations so vulnerable to the devourer threat was being replaced by the kind of desperate creativity that humans had always possessed. The galaxy was learning to fight like humans. Captain Julie Adams piloted a modified science vessel toward the heart of the enemy formation, where the primary Queen entity directed the devourer assault. Her ship had been loaded with a prototype weapon based on concentrated human neural patterns, a device so dangerous that it would certainly kill anyone who activated it. "This is for Earth," Julie whispered as she guided her ship into the creature's massive body. "This is for every human who died in slavery. This is for every child who will never see their parents again." The explosion that followed tore apart the Queen entity from the inside out, but more importantly, it created a cascade failure that spread through the Devourer collective consciousness. Their greatest strength, the shared mind that allowed perfect coordination, became their ultimate weakness as chaotic human thought patterns infected their entire network across the battlefield. Devourer entities began turning on each other or simply shutting down completely. The survivors fled beyond the galactic rim, their collective mind too damaged to mount another coordinated assault. The galaxy had been saved, but the cost was enormous. Entire human communities had been wiped out. Alien civilizations lay in ruins. Whole star systems had been sacrificed to achieve victory. Admiral Martinez looked at the casualty reports and felt the weight of every death. Millions of humans had died to save the civilizations that had enslaved them. The survivors began the long journey back to their homeworlds. But the galaxy they returned to was fundamentally different. The old power structures had collapsed under the pressure of war. The species that had once seemed so superior had been humbled by their dependence on human sacrifice. 3 months after the battle, the Galactic Charter of Equal Species was signed. On Earth, the Blue World had been restored as humanity's sovereign homeworld, its cities rebuilt and its people free to return from across the galaxy. Chancellor Vextara, his golden feathers now completely gray with age and stress, stood before the human delegation with genuine humility. "I must ask for forgiveness that I know we do not deserve," the former leader of humanity's enslavement said quietly. "We were wrong about your species. We were wrong about the nature of strength. We were wrong about everything that matters." President Michelle Taylor, elected leader of the reformed Earth government, responded with words that would reshape galactic civilization. "We do not fight for revenge, Chancellor. We fought for the simple idea that no species should kneel before another. Today we write a new chapter where strength comes not from domination but from unity in our differences." The ceremony was attended by representatives from every surviving species in the galaxy. Human children played alongside alien young on the rebuilt grounds of what had once been the United Nations building. Former slaves worked as equals with their former masters to plan the reconstruction of devastated worlds, but the most important change was in the deep space monitoring stations that now ringed the galaxy. Mixed crews of humans and aliens stood ready to face whatever threats the universe might bring. The detection networks were commanded by both human intuition and alien logic, combining the best qualities of all species. Jake Morrison, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, watched from his office window as construction crews worked to expand the space elevators that connected the planet to orbit. Human and alien engineers worked side by side, their combined efforts achieving more than either species could have accomplished alone. Ben Carter had returned to Earth to serve in the new Planetary Defense Force, training crews that included beings from dozens of different worlds. The former mining slave now commanded respect from aliens who had once seen him as property. Dr. Maria Santos led a research institute that combined human creativity with alien knowledge, working on technologies that might prevent future crises. Her work attracted the brightest minds from across the galaxy, all united by the understanding that diversity was not a weakness but their greatest strength. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. The species they had feared for being too dangerous had saved them all. The unpredictability they had tried to suppress was exactly what had been needed when faced with an existential threat. Humanity had earned their place not through conquest but through sacrifice. In the years that followed, new threats would emerge from the depths of space. Unknown enemies would challenge the peace that had been bought with so much blood. But the galaxy would face them with a new understanding. They were strongest not when they imposed uniformity, but when they embraced the beautiful chaos of life in all its forms, the children playing in Earth's restored parks would grow up in a universe where freedom was not granted by the powerful but defended by the brave. They would inherit a galaxy where no species would ever again vote to enslave another, because they had learned that their salvation might depend on the very differences they once feared. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not as conquerors or servants, but as guardians of the principle that had always defined them. The belief that all beings deserved to be free, even those who had once denied that freedom to others. It was a lesson written in sacrifice and sealed with the blood of heroes who died so that others might live.